Hey, what's up? So, I was messing around the other day and I got to thinking, what if I took some analog pedals and I put them in front of my interface to use them instead of the digital counterparts that all these plugins come with? And the results were interesting. So, let's check it out. So, what really kind of drove this idea was getting this pedal, the way huge swollen pickle. It's just a crazy, just over the top fuzz circuit with a bunch of variation, and I think it sounds fantastic. And the first thing I did was I put it in front of an amp, and it was immediately just like, okay, this is kind of a sound. This is like, something that I've been hearing recently kind of come through. Bands like Knocked Loose have made this pedal kind of famous for just making low tuned baritone guitars over the top. But then what I did was I put it in front of my interface and I started driving some of my amp plugins with this, and I was surprised to hear how much different and maybe even better this analog pedal sounded in front of the signal chain versus the counterpart that came with the actual plugin. Now, you rarely ever find, modeled pedals and plugins. They're usually kind of like approximations. So I also decided to see what would happen if I used a pretty standard overdrive pedal. The Boss SD1, almost any amp plugin that you get, no matter how generic the overdrive is, it's based off of either this or a tube screamer. And to be fair, they don't really sound that different when you're just using them to drive a high gain amp. So I'm just going to quickly play some clips looking at, analog versus the digital counterparts and, see if we can actually hear any kind of notable difference. All right, so the first thing I have pulled up here is the Neural DSP Archetype Rabea. And the main reason I'm using this plugin is because it has both a fuzz pedal and an overdrive pedal built in. Now, they're not one-to-one comparable with these two, but for a plugin, this is about the best I could find that had both kind of, built in. So first up, I'm going to try out the SD1 up against the Paragon overdrive that's in this plugin. I'm using my LTD Eclipse. I have these brand new Will Adler Fishman pickups that I installed. And first up, let's just try the stock overdrive that comes with this preset that I made. If I turn off the overdrive, the amp is a bit more flubby, a bit more fizzy. And with it on, in fact, I could probably bring the drive level up a little bit on this. Kind of seems to be par for the course for most modeled pedals. You need to give them a little bit extra. All right, so let's move on to the SD1, which I have in front of my DI box running into my interface. Back to the modeled version. Now, to be clear, modeled overdrive, not modeled SD1. So they're not going to sound the same. In fact, I'm not trying to really, go for that. I'm not looking to like say, oh, is this even close to the real thing? I'm more looking to say, does an analog piece of hardware, in front of your interface benefit you more than going with what's baked into the plugin? So here's the plugin. And here's the pedal. This is without the pedal on. With it. So I was kind of surprised to, hear how much more like natural sounding, the analog pedal is. And actually, that's not true. I'm not really surprised at that. What I'm more surprised about is just how well, you know, throwing an analog gain circuit into a signal path that eventually goes through, digital audio conversion into a plugin, how it kind of does really do the thing that a real amp would do. Okay, so now I have the swollen pickle hooked up. I'm going to turn on the Colossus fuzz. Now, in this case, I actually did go through a couple days ago and try to match these a little bit more. Because, like I said, there's not a lot of fuzz pedals that are really, attached to some of these plugins. And so to find one, I was like, well, let's try to see if I can get it to sound somewhat like the analog pedal. So here's the digital pedal. And granted, for those of you who are not high gain people, this is going to sound probably pretty gnarly. Because these fuzz pedals run the way that I'm doing it, just destroy the front of the amp. So let's move on to the pickle. Back over to the Colossus. Yeah, so both sound really gnarly. They both sound pretty good. I just think when I'm, listening back and I'm hearing what's going on with the pickle, I'm gonna keep calling it the pickle. It has this like this response, almost like just immediate response and kind of heft to it that the digital version just kind of doesn't. I do think part of that is because the pedal inside of the plugin is, it's going to be subject to that latency that you're getting when you're playing. Granted, you're going to be hearing the latency no matter what through the whole system, but somehow the analog piece of gear here, as I'm playing, the way it hits just seems to be a little bit more immediate. I'm going to switch over to a baritone guitar because I do think the fuzz effect here really benefits from a low tuning. All right, so here's my Schecter 27-inch baritone. It's tuned to drop A. And let's see what we get with the Colossus fuzz. Not bad. Let's go to the pickle. Back over to the Colossus. So neither one sounds bad. I just, like I said before, the analog pedal here, there's just like an immediate response. There's kind of like this thing going on where you feel it a little bit more, even through all the digital, muckety muck. It just kind of comes across a little bit, more natural to my ear. So I just, I had this thought in my head and I just wanted to throw it out there real quick. If you have any comments or suggestions, whatever, or if you think, I'm smoking crack and that this is just a dumb idea, let me know in the comments. So later.